like the Singaporeans, they usually hang out in the resorts and never leave the resorts. They stay there. And then the Europeans actually go to places like Mount Kinabalu. They go there and you never see them again. They never come back. And you see the Koreans, where they basically are foodies, right? They love the food and they love the beaches. So they're pretty much all over the place. You'll see a Korean every single day in this place. Hello everyone, this is Rowan Blue here in Kota Kinabalu, Sabah, Borneo in East Malaysia. Always a mouthful to say the full name there. But today's topic would be on the pros and cons of living here in Kota Kinabalu. So many of you might not know where Kota Kinabalu would be, but it's actually way down south near the Philippines, and it wasn't actually a very popular travel destination a long time ago. Pretty much North America probably doesn't know too much about Borneo, but nowadays, other than hearing about Phuket or the islands in Thailand, which everybody knows of, people are starting to gradually talk about Kota Kinabalu and how it's a very wonderful place to be, especially with its beaches and its jungles and just the modern amenities and the development that's happening here. But anyways, I just wanted to talk about some of the pros and cons of living here in Kota Kinabalu, starting with the pros. One thing that we immediately notice here when arriving here to Kota Kinabalu is that the people here really are protective of their wildlife, and it's a beautiful place to be, and especially if you're a nature lover. And there's tons of different places where you can go hiking as well, and of course the beautiful beaches as well. But not only are there the nature walks you can experience here in Kota Kinabalu, but if you get tired from walking around in the sun, you can also go into the really modern malls that they have here. They have malls on pretty much every street, and they're pretty new as well. We went to a couple of them already, but the malls are very convenient here. We actually don't go there necessarily for buying anything. We actually just take advantage of the air conditioning. I think a lot of people do that actually. And another pro would be the multiculturalism here. So there's tons of different people here, varieties of cultures. I believe in Malaysia as a whole, Bumiputras make up roughly about 68% of the population, whereas the Chinese, they make up about 21%, and the East Indians make up around 11%, and there's the other as well. But what's amazing about the multiculturalism here is that it's really mixed up in its foods. So you can find like Chinese food, you can find Malay food, you can find Indian food. So we were actually able to visit KL on the other side, the main peninsula over there in West Malaysia. But there's a lot of similarities that are here as well in Kota Kinabalu. But then like we were able to eat laksa, but laksa, there's different kinds of laksas everywhere, right? But we had laksa over in Malacca and KL, and we had laksa here in Kota Kinabalu. So there's a lot of different varieties of foods here, and that brings up another point, the food culture here. Like every block that you walk on in Kota Kinabalu, especially the place we're at right now in Api Api Center, there's a restaurant on every corner, and it's very reasonable as well. You're not spending too much on food at all. Like you can get a full-size meal for like $2 if you wanted to, and there's a number of different places where you can just sit down and enjoy your meal, and the food actually comes out really quick because they actually have everything kind of pre-made. And we actually like going to the Gaya area in Chinatown, and there's a whole bunch of variety of foods over there as well. Like you can get meat buns, you can get dim sum, you can get other types of foods I can't really pronounce right now, but I do have a video showing all of the foods that we have eaten in that area. You can go left or right, and everywhere you go, every corner has some food. And it's great because it fills up your days really quickly, and it's actually a great activity for us to do, just hopping from one food vendor to the next. And that's one thing we're really excited about in trying out new different types of foods. But given that Kota Kinabalu is on the coastline next to the sea, you can get lots of seafood as well. So there's tons of wet markets, and there's night markets, and there's day markets, all full of fresh seafood. So it's actually very cost effective as well. The seafood isn't that expensive, but of course it's in comparison to other types of foods, it is a little bit more pricier, that's true. But if you're selective with what you eat for the seafood, it's actually quite affordable. But another historic fact about Kota Kinabalu, surprisingly, would be the coffee shops. And they're not actually called just coffee shops, they're called cafes. And you would have these coffees that were integrated into the culture of Kota Kinabalu. And together with the culture and the history and the brewing of the coffee, they mix it together with the foods as well. So there's a food culture together with the coffee that makes a fantastic cultural blend. And it's one of the highlights here in Kota Kinabalu for a lot of people visiting here as well. And another thing I noticed was that Kota Kinabalu, there's a lot of young people here as well. I mean, that could be an advantage or disadvantage, but that was kind of different from Thailand, I guess. Well, case by case really. There's an older generation I found there in Thailand, especially with the expat community. But here in Kota Kinabalu, maybe it's still kind of new, but we go to the malls, we go to the streets, and there's a whole bunch of young people here. So I'm not entirely sure what the nightlife would be. We're not really nightlife people, but I'm imagining it to be pretty lively. But another great thing about Kota Kinabalu is there's an international airport as well. So you can probably fly to Kota Kinabalu easily from where you're watching this video from. And they also have transportation as well. Not as many taxis, surprisingly enough. I actually heard that the locals don't even like the taxis here. And they use what's called Grab, which is similar to Uber, and it's really cost effective as well. You just download a Grab app and just wait for your driver, which is usually the driver is a couple minutes away, so you don't have to wait that long. And then you can just get to your destination from there, and it's really, really cheap to do so. So I highly recommend Grab as well. And another thing is it's a very walkable city as well. The sidewalks are wide. The only fear I have would be, crossing the street. The reason being is because there's not a lot of traffic lights, and when you do actually get to a traffic light, even if you press the indicator light, you gotta run across the street. You're basically risking your life because none of the cars will stop for you, even if the pedestrian light is on. So that's the case for all of Southeast Asia, of course, as well. But another pro would be the internet speeds. The internet speeds are actually pretty decent here. So we're actually digital nomads, and so we do a lot of video editing and uploading. So it's really important for us to have fast speeds, and it wasn't too bad. We uploaded a video in 20 minutes, really. So it's a good place for digital nomads as well. And another pro would be that people here in Kota Kinabalu, they speak English. So if you're from a country that's primarily English-based, you won't have an issue at all. And another pro would definitely be the visa. We actually get a 90-day entry, free entry here, which is awesome because we actually had to get out of Thailand where they only gave us 1 month. From that perspective, Malaysia is a great place for a lot of people as well. Remember, you get 90 days. I believe it's different for certain countries, so you may want to look directly on the Malaysian government website to see how long you can actually stay. For most Western countries though, it's 90 days, so it makes it awesome here. But another point I want to bring up is that it's really quiet here. Like we've been to a couple of cities already in Malaysia. We went to Penang, went to KL, went to Malacca. Penang and Malacca, they're smaller cities, but yet Penang actually wasn't as quiet as we first imagined it to be. It's actually not that small. I believe they have a population of 2 million over there, but it is an island, but it's pretty busy. and it's crowded. And Malacca was less cars, it's quiet, but I would say Kota Kinabalu, in comparison to all of those cities, is probably a lot quieter, and good reason why a lot of people from KL come over here for their vacation as well, to spend that time here. You know, to take advantage of how quiet it is over here. But another pro, and a definite pro, would be the affordability of everything. So whether it be accommodation, or the foods, or transportation, it's all very affordable from the Western perspective. So you can actually stretch your dollars a little further here, and at the same time helping the local economy here in Kota Kinabalu as well. But another thing that we have noticed is a lot of people are cleaning the streets, you know. It's almost like an event. They go around with the brooms and they're picking up garbage off of the streets and everything, which is really good to see. And while it is a tourist area, and they want to make it as appealing as possible to the tourists, but it's not entirely clean though, we've noticed. But we'll get to the cons in a second here. And another thing we've noticed is that there's lots of development here. Like some people are saying that it might possibly be the next Hawaii. Who knows? It is a beautiful place, and we have noticed a lot of condos being built up as well with modern amenities, right? It's almost standard now in Malaysia to, whenever you want to get a condo, to have a swimming pool and a gym and a nice lounge. And for those who want to actually live in Kota Kinabalu, it might be pretty great for you to come here as well, because especially if you're a beach bum, and also you know, you want to be close to the modern amenities as well. There's tons of it, just like back home. So it becomes very convenient for Westerners. So yeah, there's a lot of pros, but I'd like to talk about some of the cons as well. But then please don't get offended, especially the locals of Kota Kinabalu. These points can occur in any city in the world, and we have experienced that in many other cities we have visited as well. But anyways, let's start with the cons. So one of the first cons that I like to mention, and what we have observed right away, there's garbage floating in the sea and the mini canals. I did mention earlier that there's crews that are cleaning this garbage up, but it seems as though, I'm not sure where the garbage is coming from, maybe from the locals, maybe from the tourists, who knows what it is, but I think Kota Kinabalu probably needs a larger cleaning crew to clean up you know, the garbage that's floating in the ocean. You know, it's mainly about tourism, and people visit these beaches expecting the turquoise waters and the white sand beaches, and simply being able to step into the water and snorkel where it's clean. But to mention the dirtiness, we actually read an article, could be coming from China, or it could be coming from the Philippines as well. So the garbage in itself doesn't originate here in the local area, but I don't know, case by case, because I actually saw a lot of water canals that had garbage in them that wasn't connected to the sea at all. So case by case, but I think they really have to get their recycling programs out there, and just to maybe build up more of a cleaning crew. And another point that I'd like to bring up is that we've actually been confronted by some beggars as well. I mean, we've gone to other cities in the world, I mentioned earlier, and this is actually the first town where we were confronted by a lot of beggars, actually, especially in areas where there's viewpoints or the markets. You know, little kids will come up to you and, you know, ask for money, and we found that a little bit surprising. And there's actually some beggars as well right next to merchants, you know, right next to where you pay your goods, begging for money as well. So we found that kind of peculiar as well. And local people are friendly here, definitely. But I noticed that some of the people seems as though they're kind of tired of the average tourists as well. And they're not all that friendly towards the tourists. Probably for good reason, because some of the tourists, I'm not saying they're all angels either, But yeah, there's a little bit of tension there, I find. There have been previous incidents here in Kota Kinabalu. You just have to simply look for them of certain tourists who have done certain things that were disrespectful. So I can see why that would be the case. And I noticed that people either really stare at you or they don't even make eye contact at all. They probably stare at you trying to figure out who you are. So there's people from Korea, there's people from Singapore, there's people from Japan, there's people from China. And the local Malaysians don't really want to create those long-lasting relationships with the tourists. It makes sense because most of the tourists are transient, meaning that they only stay in one particular location for a short period of time, and then they fly off back to home or to another country. There's kind of an interesting short-term relationship between the two. But if you are European, you'll stick out like a sore thumb. But of course, with the variety of Asians, multicultural Asian hub, there's also the stereotypes as well. Like a lot of the local Malaysians have their stereotypes of who the Koreans are, who the Singaporeans are, who the Chinese are. And it's kind of an interesting perspective, really. Other than looking at the person as an individual, they look at people, I would say, as a walking wallet in some ways as well. Again, this is the case for any other country we've visited, especially the hot tourism places, but I find this to be true here as well. They work together with the stereotypes and the walking wallets. So, but of course locals have to earn a living as well, but just keep in mind that the stereotypes are strong and alive here. So it's interesting because we were talking to our Airbnb host, and he mentioned that particular people hang out in particular places. Like the Singaporeans, they usually hang out in the resorts and never leave the resorts. They stay there. And then the Europeans actually go to places like Mount Kinabalu. They go there and you never see them again. They never come back. And you see the Koreans where they basically are foodies, right? They love the food and they love the beaches, so they're pretty much all over the place. You'll see a Korean every single day in this place. And another thing is we are actually in the rainy season right now, and a lot of you might think that it rains all day, you know, all week, but it's not the case at all. It actually only rains like 1 or 2 hours a day, which is fabulous, right? We didn't expect it. I mean, right now I'm looking out the window and it's a blue sky. You know, it's beautiful out there. But another con would be maybe the crime. I mean, there's not a lot of crime here, definitely not. I mean, the population here in Kota Kinabalu is about 500,000 people, but the worst crime is probably just petty crime. But there were some travel advisories against coming to Kota Kinabalu because of what's happening there in the southeastern China Sea. But then coming here in Kota Kinabalu, we didn't really face any kind of threat at all. And there's tons of tourists here, especially from Korea. So I wouldn't say it's all that dangerous. Maybe if you go a little more further east near the Philippines, it might be a little bit more dangerous in that area. But then there were incidents that did happen years ago in that area, but that has since been resolved. So it's actually becoming a lot more, like I said, tourist friendly. So you'll see security guards everywhere actually in Kota Kinabalu, like every block pretty much. And they have those CCTV cameras as well. But another con I have noticed is that it's a cash-based monetary system. So you can't really pull out your credit card and start purchasing stuff. I mean, I'm not saying it's completely gone, but if you're gonna eat at certain places, make sure you have a lot of ringgit in your wallet. And another point would be that the cars, like I mentioned earlier, they do not stop for you. So you have to run across the street, kind of like jumper frog. And you can either follow a group of people or, you know, just get the timing right and run across the street, risking your life basically. So they do not stop for pedestrians. And another thing is you'll find that there's not a lot of bridges for pedestrians to go over these major roads as well. But there were a few and there were actually a few that were still under construction, so we couldn't actually use them, so we had to play jumper frog in a lot of areas. And another point would be there probably isn't going to be a lot of jobs here as well, because it's mainly a tourist industry. So usually in Malaysia, what they do is they primarily look at the locals first for any job position. The only way that you can really find a job here is if you're distinct, you know, if you have an ability that a local does not. So, but the chances of that is very rare here. So just keep that in mind, that it's probably pretty difficult for you to find a job here if you're looking to live here. But another point that we have observed here, especially just recently coming from Thailand, visiting Thailand there, is that there's a lot more rules here. There's signs saying you can't do this, you can't do that. I noticed that, you know, it made me feel a little bit uncomfortable because I wasn't too sure exactly what I was doing right, what I was doing wrong, and I would intently look at these signs. But strangely enough, even if there were certain rules, I would observe around me, and a lot of people were not following them, which is kind of interesting to me. Just like taking photos in a mall, people were still taking photos and making videos in malls, I found. And another thing we have observed is that it's actually a lot more humid here than in Thailand. Now, we were in Hua Hin, one of the more drier places in Thailand, so maybe it's not a fair comparison, but we're also in Bangkok as well, and we noticed right away that it's very, very humid here in Malaysia. And it wasn't strange for us to take 3 showers a day, because you know, we would go out for breakfast, then we come back, then we go to lunch, then we come back, and then we go to dinner and we come back, and each one of those times we had to take a shower because of the humidity that built up on our bodies there. So a quick wash and we were all good though. But overall, despite all of the cons mentioned, I would say the pros really outweigh the cons by far. But in any major tourist destination, of course, keep in mind that they'll always be looking at you as a wallet. But if you're looking to live here long term, who knows, maybe some things may change. You'll be able to maybe make deeper relationships with the local Malaysians. They won't look at you as someone who's transient perhaps, but it really depends on you and how you want to integrate into this society. And the biggest pro, I would say, is that people here speak English, and that was a huge difference compared to Thailand there, where not a lot of people really did speak English, and if they did, it was almost like broken English, right? But here you can have full-on conversations with a lot of people here. I mean, I'm not saying everybody speaks English here, but the majority do, and the people who don't, they know the basics, and you can get around perfectly. So, and if you're a beach bum and you like to be near modern amenities and you like to take hikes in the jungle area, and this is a perfect place for you. Like if you love the nature walks, if you like nature, then this is a great place to be. But of course, if you like the large city mentality, like living in KL or Bangkok or some large city, then this place probably wouldn't be for you. But of course, you can jump from one place to the other. Malaysia has a whole variety of different towns for you to live in. So that would be the overall impression I had for the pros and cons of Kota Kinabalu, Sabah, Borneo, East Malaysia. If you agree with me, or if you have other points, or if you disagree with me, just go ahead and comment below. If you like this vlog, please don't forget to give me a like, subscribe if you haven't already, and hit that notification bell for more of my coming content here. Thank you for watching my vlog. Be free, gain wealth, and travel far.